Tech heads, back once again. On this week's episode, we take a full cannonball deep into the waters of the terminal, or command prompt for you PC heads out there. We talk Git, Git Commands, GitHub, basically all things Git. And also, Anna gives me some tips on how to migrate from Mac to PC. This is Tech Heads.
4, 3, 2, 1. So, here we go.
How you all feel tonight?
Tech Heads back at it once again, reunited for another episode. I hope everyone's doing super well out there. How's the East Coast going, Anna?
Hey, Victor. Hey, everybody. Episode 10. Can you believe it?
It's episode 10.
Yeah, man. And I love the intro, by the way. There, I can see the audience clapping here with excitement and rooting. Yeah, everything is good. Just, staying busy. How about you?
Oh, it's not too bad. Super insanely busy week for me, actually. Finally, actually having a full week at the new company.
Oh, right.
It's been great. Everybody I've met has been just stupid nice, like just insanely welcoming, and everybody wants to see that I'm succeeding and doing well, and everything has been just like flawlessly organized for me. Like there's this whole roadmap of like everything I should be knowing, and everybody has just been very like everybody kind of just wants to have meetings with me so they can train me on one thing and like make sure that I'm ready for something that might come up in the near future or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm meeting with people who really know our system super well. They've been there for like 20 years and they're trying to take me through it and explain it as if I'm 5 years old, because that's what I need sometimes. I really need it to be dumbed down.
Yeah.
So that's been really, really awesome. So far, so good at the new company for sure. But yeah, like I said, definitely some sort of learning curve. And I'm really excited to just be actually contributing to what we're building, because I haven't really done anything too crazy yet. They've only let me actually, build very small portions of things.
Right.
Understandably, because I'm new. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited for what's to come.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. I mean, I'm a little over the 2-month mark now at my current job. And, it can be pretty daunting. Like there were times that I was doubting whether it was going to be a good match. But for the past couple weeks, I've been feeling pretty good. I think I made good progress. And just this past week, I spent a good time training with a third-party service that we might end up using for like our BI needs. And and they're so organized. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. And that was the one thing that I highlighted a lot, was like how streamlined their process, like to get you on, like their onboarding processes. And so, I'm kind of like at the forefront in that. And then just, like already have my daily tasks and checks that I have to do. I felt so accomplished this week when I was able to create a little change log using a batch file in Windows. And I was like, hey, look at that. Now I'm finally getting somewhere. So, a lot of, RDPing into servers, all that fun stuff. And definitely want to try and squeeze. I had an idea to use Python, and I wrote it on my work notebook, and I can't remember now what it is exactly, but I definitely want to try and, get some coding done in there. Actually, I think I was able to recycle some code for that Google app script that I did a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah.
Did it again for another case, like another use case that we have. And I was like, oh, look at that. I'm so happy that I did it the first time, because then it was pretty much like a copy paste,
Yeah.
Just had to tweak a few things. So I'm definitely getting some programming in there. And the other stuff is just, it seems like it's very mainly, data focused or like automation getting, the what's it called, like your raw data from whatever the origin is into kind of like our ETL. Like in the case of our company, we use Microsoft SQL Server, and then you got to get out of there. You need to get your data out of that to your reporting platform where you're going to build all your reports and dashboards and all that fun stuff. So yeah, no, I feel like I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident now, and I think there will be some like interesting things to come to in the future, but I feel a lot more comfortable because I think that I kind of like underestimated how it can be. Like starting from scratch, like when you go from a job that you're really used to something brand new. You just have to be patient with yourself. That's like that. I just got to that point and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to freak out anymore. That's, it's just going to take a little bit of time. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely reached like this freak out mode like that you were mentioning where I feel like it's, some sort of imposter syndrome where I'm like, how could they have hired somebody like me? Like, I feel like I'm not worthy of this or anything whatsoever. But mostly I feel like that goes back to the fact that I'm relearning everything on a PC, essentially, which I know you are going through the same thing. So, like, how's that migration from Mac to PC going for you? Because I know, at least for me, when I want to do a shortcut like copy or cut or paste or whatever, I use my thumb because the command button is next to the space bar.
Yeah.
But on a PC, if I want to do copy paste, I have to use my pinky to reach that little button on the corner, which I don't even know what it is on a PC. It's is it function? Control.
No, it's control. Yeah.
Yeah. Sucks. I hate it. But now I do it on the PC, or I do it on my Mac. I use my pinky to get the control button, which, that's not going to do you any good on a Mac. You have to use the command button. So that's been a hassle. Right. And the scrolling's the opposite for me. It's just, it's a whole thing. I feel like a caveman when I'm actually using it because when I'm in these meetings and I'm showing somebody that I can do something because they're training me how to do it and they're like, I'm screen sharing with them. As you said last episode, I think that like whenever somebody's watching, you type so much slower. Oh my God. I'm like a kindergartner learning a computer for the first time, like typing super slowly. I'm like, hey, how do you do this? Like the most basic thing. So it's been a hassle for me. I'm sure it's going much better for you.
No, I think, okay, so to go back to the beginning, because I know that this, like you said, it's your first full week, and obviously, it's a lot to take in. Like you get a tiny glimpse of how much you're gonna have to learn, and that's why you kind of have to like reel that, the imposter syndrome or like any kind of like insecurity, anxiety in, because it is only the first week. Like you said, they have a defined roadmap for you, so they know that. And I think last week you mentioned, right, your manager doesn't expect you to be able to be fully self-sufficient for months into the job. So that is just a matter of like you really have to take his word for it. But I think one thing that that helped me out with the whole like transition from Mac to PC was the Logitech, the MX Keys keyboard that I told you that I got months ago, because they're like the short keys, and I feel like that helped a little bit. Obviously the keyboard shortcuts are still different, but I mean, it's a whole different operating system, and it's something to get used to. The good thing is that you get to use it for like 8-9 hours a day, so you're gonna get used to it quickly. But I think the keyboard definitely helped me out because they gave me one at the office that wasn't awful, but I just didn't like it because when I go into the office, I plug my laptop to the docking station so I can have my monitors up, right? And at home, I needed a Windows keyboard, and I didn't want a wired one, so I got this one, and I pretty much take it with me back and forth because I like using my own. And yeah, so that I think that helped a little bit because it feels more familiar. Like the keys feel more familiar because they're the low profile kind. They're not like the deeper, like the gaming kind. So these are, I think that was one thing that, it helped me speed up the process, I guess, to learn. But there is still like a whole lot of Googling that I have to do to find out how to do shortcuts. Like there was one day I was, because you know how on the Mac I think if you scroll up to like the top of the screen, you can create a new desktop screen, right? Like it pretty much gives you like a brand new desktop, and you can
Yeah.
start from scratch there. And I clicked somewhere in the windows and I was like, what the hell? I just lost all of my browser windows and all the things I had open and I cannot figure that out. It took me like, I don't know, 15-20 minutes to go back to, and I ended up figuring it out by mistake. I pressed every, key and like right click and combination of, keyboard and mouse or whatever, to go back to what I had because I didn't want to lose it. And yeah, so the like little things that gave me a bit of a, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna lose because as a true developer, I still have like browser windows that were open like a month ago and they're still up and running there. I don't close anything anymore.
You never know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like when you're at home and you're like, oh, why do I need this cable? Let me just toss it. And then next thing you know, you need it tomorrow. That's exactly what happened to me with, the work laptop. The other day, I closed the tab because I was like, no, 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 I'm done with this. And then obviously needed it the day after. So here I go again, trying to find that same page. So I just leave things open until I'm like 150% sure that I don't need it.
I'm with you on that because my company we have lots of you know built in-house software, and a lot of it just doesn't apply to me, frankly. And I'll bookmark it just in case.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I'm on day 3. I have 100 bookmarks for everything because we just have just a gazillion things that the company uses. So
Right.
like here I am on like the tail end of my week. I'm going like, oh, like I know I don't need this. I know I don't need this. And then next thing you know, like I'm down to like maybe a dozen bookmarks that I'm pretty confident that I'll use.
Right.
So then one of my training sessions rolls around and I'm screen sharing and they're like, oh, like just navigate to this tool. And then like after that, we're going to have this open. No idea what they were talking about. I was like, oh my God, is that something that we built? And they're like, yeah. You're like, you should have it saved probably. Right. And I didn't. So like, I just look like a dumbass just saying like, oh, where can I find this? Like, can you help me find it on my computer? And like,
Yeah.
just making an utter fool of myself. But as I said before, like nobody has been like, how dare you like not bookmark this, or like how dare you like be
Right.
so bad at that. Like everybody's so chill and understanding. I haven't gotten a single like bad vibe from the company whatsoever. It's been
That's
really good, and they
awesome.
totally understand that like it's been it's a whole transitional phase. Like you have to actually get a little comfortable with even talking to these people at first, and then you have to understand like the whole flow of data, and
Of
it's a
course.
lot for sure. And from the people that I've talked to, it's really interesting because they see what I'm doing for the next few days on like our calendars and stuff. They're like, wait, you're already doing that this week? I'm like, yeah, like I got a little more comfortable with this, so they said that I should move on to that. And they're like, that took me 2 months to get to. Like, how are you already on that? So that makes me feel kind of
That's
good sometimes. But
that's
at the same
awesome.
time, it does seem kind of rushed in a way. But
Yeah.
I think it'll all solidify into this whole cohesive understanding cloud in my brain hopefully soon. So that
Oh
should feel
yeah.
good eventually.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think the key is to not get too overwhelmed in the beginning because of everything that you're initially exposed to that you have no idea what it is. But, also like do your best to try and understand because I think for me it was kind of like know, I can, I guess, the best way to explain like my journey up to this point at the company, was like the first week, I got some really good feedback from the team. By the end of the first week, like that Friday, I thought that, I kind of like, I was already like on like an upward trend, in terms of like learning. And then second week, so kind of like that as well. And by the end of the second week and into the third week, I thought that I kind of like I had started going on a decline, because that's when I think, I hit a wall and I was like, oh shoot, yeah, there's a lot that I really have no idea. And that was, and then I kind of stayed like kind of plateaued for a couple of weeks. And then for the past, I would say like 3 weeks or so, it's been steadily, going upward again. And I feel like I am definitely getting more and more self-sufficient. And I started telling them, like I work with our data architect, and we usually, up, I think for the first couple of weeks, we were constantly getting on calls, sometimes twice a day, and just spending, some time on Google Meet, to like sharing our screens, talking about things and this and that. And there have been times that I told them, I was like, hey, I got, a couple of other things that I really need to prioritize. Is it okay if I, do my own thing? And they are totally fine with that, because they know, because that was another thing that I think we've discussed before. Like there have been days that I don't know, probably half the day just on phone calls. And I was like, when do these people actually get any work done? Because,
I feel you.
yeah, because I was like, geez, I mean, sometimes I put myself on mute if I'm not directly contributing to that call and I'm kind of like a fly on the wall. I put myself on mute and I might carry on while listening, obviously paying attention to the conversation, but try to kind of multitask, because otherwise I probably be, working from like 7:30 in the morning, like when I start, until I don't know, 7, 8 o'clock at night, because there's that much work. Like I think tomorrow I have to, to get some work done. But yeah, the phone calls, like sometimes they don't stop. And I've had to say, like for once or twice, I was just like, hey, I know that you want me to participate, to kind of like, meet people from other departments and understand what it is that they're working on. But this doesn't really directly require me to be on there, because it's not like I'm gathering requirements for reports and anything like that. It's just to get to know the business. But I have other things that I could be doing that will probably be more beneficial, because I actually have a deliverable. And so, yeah, they're totally fine with that. Like I said, everybody has been pretty nice and understanding too. It's only been 2 months. So you can also impose, some, I think, give them some feedback about how you're feeling. So it's not too much that they're like, oh no, he can handle it. And then you're like quietly suffering. I say, like, I think when I hit like a wall, I told them, I was like, look, I need to maybe get a bit more training, because I mean, you guys think that I'm like this, all-knowing, I don't know, entity that just came onto your company. That's not the case at all. I still have to learn a whole lot to be able to contribute. So uh yeah, I think it's very fair for you, as an individual. And I say that for you, for me, as an employee, to tell your employer, if you need a little bit of like take the foot off the gas for a bit, so you can, you know, get some get some time, like take some time to understand things. So
Yeah, definitely. It's all part of the process. Every company's totally different, even though it seems
yeah.
like on the surface level, like, oh, like I'll transition, no problem. Like I get what their stack is. They put it on the job description, but of course there's so much underneath that is so much different than what you're used to sometimes, and
Yep.
it's sometimes not the most smooth transition. But luckily, it's been anticipated for my role, so they understand that it's going to be months until I can at least just do things on my own and maybe not be always asking people questions and whatnot.
Right.
So we'll see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been the vibe so far, and I think it's gonna be much much of a smoother, normal workday in the next like few weeks. Hopefully, no more than a month. Otherwise, it's gonna be crazy because just like you, it's been mostly meetings all day, and then like no offense, not like a ton of work, but when I am doing these meetings, I am kind of working in them sometimes because they want to shadow me, but. Yeah. Just like meeting after meeting so I can meet people and meet departments and see how everything plays into one another and learn the business, which is such a big business. It's just crazy. But I think it's all about just not hitting that mental wall too hard. Like, of course it's totally normal to hit a wall in general, but understand that that shouldn't be the end of it, that you just have to kind of see past it and understand that things are only going to get better. So
of course. Yeah, absolutely. I think like you said, in the beginning I had some free time, and guess what I did? I was coding and I was using Git. Hey. I was committing all my code to Git. It was a productive phase, I'll tell you. So I think that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about. The cat's out of the bag now, right? What we're going to talk about today.
I know. The secret's out. We're talking about Git today, which is something that
get it together.
We're going to get it together. Before we actually really talk about what Git is, I kind of want to go into something a little different. So if you own a computer, whether that's Mac or PC or whatever, or Linux, you all have this interface that it's called something different on every operating system, but I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a Mac user because I am most familiar with being a Mac user because that's what I have. And, all these things, they're very easy to Google the equivalent command of, and sometimes they are the same command, but the rest of the episode, it's going to be assuming that you're on a Mac, unfortunately. So I'll try my best to really get deeper into it, but basically, we're going to be talking about the terminal first, which is the Mac equivalent of a command prompt. And basically what this scary looking application is it's much more than this black window that you open and see nothing on. There's no buttons, there's no UI really, there's nothing. All it does is have this little blinking line that, prompts you to type something. But in case you didn't know, it's actually super, super powerful. You can think of it as this ultimate shortcut hub that allows you to actually take control of your entire operating system. So in terms of like a Mac, I would say like more than 90% of the OS is actually reachable on the terminal. And that's pretty good when you compare it to Windows equivalent, which is, I don't know, in my opinion, it kind of blows from my experience and from what I've heard of others. It's like more of 10% that you can actually achieve the whole control of. But anywho, it's not too hard to get started when using it. And once you do, you really get like this quick sense of how much of a time saver and convenience it actually has. Because we use it to quickly create files and folders. We move files from one folder to another. We download packages for projects that we're actually working on. We push projects to remote repositories, which we're going to get into later in the episode. I think what we can do first is actually run through some basic commands that you can get started in the terminal with to actually get you a little more comfortable with how it works. So, Anna, what do you want to like go through first as far as basic commands? What are like the first like the most basic commands that somebody getting familiar with the terminal for the first time ever would use?
I would say CD, like if you want to go from, let's say, one folder, to another, then you have to do CD for change directory. And then you can do the folder name that you're looking for with the / or /, depending on which operating system you're on. and enter, and that will take you to that folder. If you want to go back up one directory, it's cd and then dot dot. There is also pwd, print working directory, to tell you the exact path that you're working at that point. Touch, and then a file name. It means that you're creating a file at that directory. So it could be like touch space test.txt. So that would create a file called the test.txt. And you can do open, like after you do touch, you can do open and then that file, and then it will open it with the default program for that kind of file extension.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are the ones that I think make directory is mkdir, so mkdir, and then whatever name you want to give to your folder. I think those are like really basic ones, that I had to learn in the beginning.
Definitely. Yeah, whenever I explain the terminal to people, I always tell them to imagine it as if it's their Finder on a Mac.
Yeah.
Whatever. What's on the PC? What's the little
File Explorer?
File Explorer. Thank you. I compare it to that because that's essentially what you're doing on the terminal in terms of folder like navigation. Because you're double clicking on a folder to open it to see what files are in it and subdirectories that are inside of it. The navigation that you are familiar with within these programs like Finder and Document Explorer. Is that what it's called? Document Explorer?
File Explorer.
File Explorer.
Yeah.
God, I'm such a Mac user. It's like I can't even understand why PCs exist sometimes, which I'm really sorry about.
Mac Master Race.
I honestly,
instead of
just
yeah,
abolish PCs at this point. But yeah, I always tell people to like imagine it as if you're just using one of those to like find some file that you like to open or like photos that you have in your computer, because you have to go through folder after folder after folder sometimes to get to something you're going to. And the terminal is just how you're doing that. You're basically typing commands that click for you in a way to like really dumb it down. You're changing directories from one to another, cd, which is one of the commands you mentioned. Yeah. And if you want to see all of the files and subdirectories within the directory that you're currently in, you would do ls, which tells you everything that you're in.
For a list.
And with starting a new project, it's really convenient because you just do mkdir, like you said, to like make the folder, which would be like, your project name, and then you navigate into the folder, and then you touch to create these files that you're going to need, like your index.html and your main.js, your style.css, like all that stuff. So really, really simple, quick, and easy to actually get your project started instead of going into the Finder to like create these files and then open them later in your IDE. So that's one big thing that the terminal is for. And as I said, the packages, that's really nice because you can just simply put in a command that will download these packages for you that you deem really important for your project to actually work, like some node packages or whatever, which you don't really need to know what they are, but just think of them as software that depends, or that your project depends on the software. So, but the really, really important part of today's episode is Git, which is all done in the terminal essentially. At least how you use it. The way it works is that it's this, it's a version control software, very simply put. It's what keeps track of changes for your computer files. It allows you to coordinate with other people who are working on the same project that you're working on. This seriously changed the game in terms of collaboration amongst teammates when working on a project together, but they might be on different machines. So there's no need to actually work in this linear fashion where you have to like go from one part of the app to another part and do it in this very specific order. Git really opened the door to non-linear development, which allows everybody to work on whatever they want in whatever order they want, essentially, versus building the app in a very specific order. So, I don't know, let's say like somebody is working on the front end of the app or a system or whatever it is, but they remembered that there is a bug on the back end. So, in order to fix that, at the moment, all they would really have to do is save their changes that they made on the front end and fix the bug that lies in the back end, and then they can return to their previous work on the front end, hopefully with no problems, fingers crossed. But Git essentially allows us to do that with not much problems. You know, unless you're using Git incorrectly, it's probably working fine. And one thing that I kind of just touched on is the development environment, which is just where you're working on or developing, you know, quote unquote, a project. It's where you code, it's where you test, it's where you debug. It's basically everything you do to make a project before it goes live or goes into a remote directory, which I'm going to get into later, I think. The development environment, I think, is more of a concept than a real thing. So don't think of this like program that I just opened to like code into. It's not like a real thing. It's more of a concept, if that makes sense. It's a workflow. Right. So anyways, we have a development environment, which is on your local machine. So it's on your Mac, it's on your PC or whatever. And on a conceptual level, there's really 3 tiers to it. So there's the working directory, there's the staging area, and then there's the local repository. And if you're not aware of what a repository is, it's basically just where all of your project's files and revision history lie. Mm-hmm. So if you like say like, oh, this is like my repo, if you want to get in on it and start working on it, it's just where all the files are for the project to make it work. So like your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript, your READMEs, your config files, your everything, like everything for your project, the revision history, everything that people did to actually make changes on the project, that's just where they are. Right. So back to the 3 tiers, to define the first one, which is the working directory. Simply put, it's just currently where you are in terms of working on the project. An off-the-dome example, I guess, would be like if you have a tree and, I don't know, there's like some animal on it, like a squirrel or an owl, I don't know. Like they're on some random branch of the tree and they're looking for food, and they find the food, they're like ready to like bring the food back to where they're, you know, their little, what are baby squirrels called? I don't know.
I have no clue.
I have no idea, but
baby squirrels.
You know, yeah, baby squirrels. They're just bringing the food back to the baby squirrels, to the center of the tree. So whatever branch that the squirrel was on to find the food, you know, they're working, they're, you know, doing whatever, they're doing their job. That was the squirrel's working directory. And I only think of that just because like working directory is sometimes called the working tree when you're working within the terminal. It'll say, you know, current tree or working tree or whatever. So it's just basically where you're doing your coding at the moment. So whatever you want to work on. And then the staging directory is just where you're collecting all of the changes that you made in the development environment. So basically, if you're using Git to do all of this, which is just how versioning works, in this stage, the staging directory, Git is basically saying, okay, cool. Like, I know that these files exist now. Like, that's it. So it goes from your working directory to actually a part of Git, so that Git understands that these files exist and that they're about to go somewhere. And the command for this would just be git add file name, or if you're committing the whole thing, you would just do git add -a for all of them. And then the next stage would be the local repository, which is just where your checkpoints are. And this is the area that kind of saves everything. So after the staging directory, the files move here, and now your staging directory is empty. There's nothing in the staging directory. They're all in your local repository. And the command for this would just be git commit. -M with a little message of what you're doing. So like think about it as like you're on a video game and like you got to like this part right before the really hard part. So like obviously you would save because you might, you know, if you're fighting a boss or whatever, you might die. So you quickly save so you know that like you have a great place to go back to in case anything goes wrong. And, you know, sometimes in a video game it timestamps where you saved or whatever. It'll name like the level that you're on. That's the same idea. At least that's how I look at it when I'm coding and shit. So, and this has all kind of led up to the part where files are then pushed to something called the remote repository, which kind of encapsulates the whole importance of all this to me, because this is what allows other people to work with you on a project. This is where you send those changes that you made to the files when you want to share them with other people who might be on your team for the project. It's also where you get other people's changes from. So in case, you know, somebody, like I said earlier, was working on the front end, you would refer back to the remote repository because other people can access it from other machines. That's where you would get those changes from in case they made changes to anything on the project that you're working on. Because let's say you're working on like an older version of the project and it doesn't align with the newer version, then, you know, the whole thing could totally break. But luckily we have Git that doesn't really happen. And to me, that's arguably like the coolest part about it. You get all your files to a remote repository, and the command for that is pretty cool. All you do is just do git push, and boom, like your stuff is live, and it's in this remote repository folder area that is there for others to access, and you guys are all building this thing together, and it's really cool. It's a great workflow. It seems confusing at first, but I don't know. It's something that's really funny because even prepping for this podcast, like it's not something I really think too deeply about. I just do it. Like, you know, my whole team, like, you know, we all shared, you know, tons of repos together, and we have to make sure that everything's in the correct version, and we don't want to mess up anything that's live, and we want to make sure that we're doing things locally before we commit them to the remote repo in case they break anything that's actually live for people. So it is really important to keep in mind, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I just remembered that the one class that I'm taking now with the software development, I mean, Git is, you know, pretty essential because we are all working remotely on a group project, and we have to, you know, code. So obviously you have to have, you know, you have your own local repositories with the, you know, the master or like the common version of the software that we're building, but then each person is working on their own thing. So you know, as a way to, I think, introduce that, because I have been familiar with Git for a little while now because I learned it at the boot camp. But for some of the folks that, you know, are taking this class now and don't really know, it's kind of like their first exposure to it. So earlier on in the semester, one of our guest lecturers, you know, he's a software engineer, and he was talking about a really interesting concept that I was doing without even knowing, like unconsciously. I wasn't even aware it was a thing, but it's called atomic commits. So that atomic commits, you know, they mean that you're constantly pushing your code. So every little change is registered rather than you add like a brand new file and like 500 lines of code and then you commit that. That's too much for the person who is in charge, or like a senior developer, to review, you know, the changes that you've made. So, you know, that's obviously, you know, that's something that you or a concept that I think someone who has a little bit of you know, experience with Git would apply. But even right off the bat, you can do that. Just like you said, you know, once you create your local repository and then you clone or you initiate your repository locally, and then you push, just go ahead and create like, you know, one folder that's going to be for like the folder that encompasses your entire project. Go ahead and push that. If you want to create an index HTML and add a couple of lines of code, go ahead and push that again, you know, commit and push. So you're not too far behind, because then you're constantly taking snapshots of your of your code, and it's easier to track all the changes that you've made. So I think that was really like valuable advice, and something that is adopted, like a best practice that's adopted in the industry. It's like a good habit to have.
Well, what was the what was it called? It was autonomous what?
Atomic, like the
Atomic
atomic
committing?
bomb. Yeah, atomic commits, right.
Atomic commits. You could for the average Joe, you can think of that as, back to the video game example, you can think of that as somebody who's playing a game, assuming autosave doesn't exist. You can think of that as somebody who's saving after they like do anything in the game whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Just so they don't have to go back and like do more to catch back up to where they left off in case they died or whatever. So
Yep.
that's essentially like the
Exactly.
same idea from what I understand. But this you actually mentioned Git clone. So can you actually tell us a little bit more about what Git clone is, and like why
Yeah.
I would use that as a developer? Like, when would I ever use that command?
Sure. So I think from what you, the scenario that you put, you were essentially creating or your project locally first, and by locally that means your machine, right? So there's another way that you can use Git, is if you create, let's say, a GitHub account. GitHub is pretty widely used software that I'm sure even junior developers, or even if you're not a developer, might have heard of it. If you create an account and you go ahead and you create a new repository, and that means that you have a remote repository already under your Git account. So the way to get that remote repository into your local machine, into your computer, is by cloning it. So you would open up a folder in your computer, like if you go under, like you said, Mac, the Finder or the File Explorer, and you go to your command line or your terminal. You're going to run the command git init to initiate a Git repository in that local instance of your folder. And then you can do git clone, and in GitHub, where you created that repository, you're going to copy the URL that they give you for that repository, and you're going to insert that right after the command git clone. So that means that now your local and your remote repositories are attached. They're connected by that command that you just ran, and then you can push and pull as you desire. So if you already have folders and files in your remote version, in your GitHub, then you could do, after you run the git init git clone with the URL, you can do a git pull, and it's going to pull all of the files, and all of the files that you have in your remote into your local instance of that repository in your folder on your machine. So that's how it works, and usually that's how I do it. Because I know that there's a different way to like initiate a repository and locally, and then that automatically creates like a GitHub repository, or like a remote repository for you. But that's what I usually do. Yeah, so git clone, and then I think it's git clone remote add, or remote, no, git clone add origin, something like that. I can't remember what the full command is now, because I know how to type it, but I never remember by heart when I have to say it.
Yeah, we're just like robots typing, and we don't really think about what we're typing, so it's totally understandable. But
Yeah.
back to GitHub, to really paint a picture for people who don't know. GitHub is not the same as Git, because some people think Git and GitHub are the exact same sort of thing, but they're not, but they totally tie into one another. So GitHub is literally just where your coding projects are hosted. Or, it's a hub. That's where the hub kind of plays into GitHub.
Right.
It's without a doubt the most popular platform for version control and collaboration. And at this point, it's almost like a social media platform for developers, as
Yeah.
it follows the same premise. You have a profile, you follow people, you like star repositories that you like. instead of, liking or hearting, you star it. That's what the whole thing is on GitHub. But you would do that, if you find the code impressive, just as much as you would think a picture is cool on Twitter or something, you would heart it. And you can share it with other people on GitHub. And you can also share other information about yourself, like where you work and all your other social medias and like what you like to code about. So it's kind of like the Facebook or Twitter of developers, I would say, to me, because you can just you can go down a rabbit hole of just looking at cool projects that people are working on, and you can even try them out yourself because people will have a live version of it or a demo, or you can even clone it to your machine and contribute to it. So then you get extra stars for contributing, and then there's also this big grid on your profile that shows how many commits you've made within the past 365 days, and they're marked by light to dark green dots. And not all the time, but sometimes employers actually determine how much of a developer you are based on these squares, which I don't think is totally fair because, at least for me, I have a totally different profile for my work GitHub versus my personal GitHub. So you're never going to know how much I actually contribute to GitHub or whatever project I'm working on based off of my personal GitHub. So, it's not the most total fair process, but it, unfortunately it is what it is. People will judge you for not, contributing so much. So it is the way it is. It's a very big platform. It's really great for collaboration when you're with teams and whatnot. It's also just great for yourself because now you have a platform that's actually very user-friendly and nice to use, where you have all of your projects up there. You can show them to people. You can have links to actually have people at least try them. And fun fact, every week when we have a new episode for the podcast, I have to actually put the episode on my website just so people can find it. So I do the same process as I mentioned before. I do, I get add -a because I changed, multiple files for my website to actually make it visible for people when they go to my website and they want to listen to a new episode. And then I do git commit for the staging process, and then I push it to my remote repository, which is my website on GitHub. And that is kind of on a very basic level how it works, how you push code to something that's live on the internet, because I'm doing this all from my local laptop, which it doesn't seem like it's tethered to the internet by any other way other than Wi-Fi, but because the repository is cloned to my machine, I have all the connection I need to actually make changes to a live site like my website where the podcast is. So that's like kind of a very simple example. I just change a little bit of HTML and a few other things in the files and whatnot. So that's kind of how it happens. And it's really not super complicated.
Yeah, I think it's really important, like you said, even if you're not really that familiar, it might sound a bit intimidating, but it's a very, I think it's an essential, part of being a developer. If that is a goal, you need to know how to use version control, whether it is through GitHub, which uses the version control software, or GitLab, or any other platform. You need to understand like the premise and, the importance of it, because now we live in a world where, a lot of people can work remotely. You're not going to always be right next to your coworkers and do some pair programming where, you can share code verbally, and you're not expected, at a production level or like working for a company to be sending each other files, like via email or Slack or whatever. That's really not the best way to do it.
So inefficient.
It's very, yeah.
And you never know what's the newest version.
Yeah, exactly. The way, like, the version control has so much benefit because you can there's a process, like you're supposed to work on your feature that needs attention, and then you are going to create a pull request. Your senior developer, whoever's in charge of reviewing those changes, is going to review those changes before it's committed to, maybe like a production environment or like your master branch or whatever. And, there's obviously, I think I haven't even I think been that exposed to it and like on a production level, like live, with a job. So I'm sure I'm only like, scratching the surface here, but it's very important. And it is something that even at the boot camp, I remember they told us, yeah, go ahead, and any kind of homework, any projects that you're doing, make sure that you commit your changes to, or like your progress, and like everything that you've done to your GitHub accounts, because that's what we used to show that you're actively coding. And you have like that nice flow of like green little squares for all the commits that you've made. It's very rewarding when you see that, because it means that you're actively coding. Unfortunately, I have some gaps on mine, but it is what it is. As long as you do something. And
Oh yeah, we're not the only people. I'd
yeah.
unfortunately, like to creep on people on GitHub and see their little green squares. And, of course it makes me feel like when I see profiles that have all dark green squares, I'm like, man, like this person lives, breathes, eats code. But
Yeah.
of course I see these people who, I may have attended boot camp with, or I just, I know them as being like very seasoned developers, I guess we could say. And like blank squares all around it. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. How can they be so qualified and so smart and build all these things but no commits? But, like I said, sometimes it's just down to the fact that they use different accounts. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just because we're burned out and we don't want to do anything. We want to take a little bit of a break and like learn something that doesn't involve coding or whatever. So
Exactly.
don't stress yourself out about not having all these dark squares. As I don't know, I feel like we make it sound way more important than it is, but it's really not. It's just fun, It's kind of like Boy Scout badges, I guess, or Girl Scout badges.
Right. Yeah.
It just kind of shows off your skills in a way. You could be absolutely terrible at coding and have all dark squares. So it really does not mean anything whatsoever, but
Right.
it's a pretty good indicator of how involved you are in the community. So there's that. But I do have some fun facts about Git.
Oh yeah, I have a few stats. Tell me yours first.
Ooh. All right, so let's go into the history first. Let's start with the obvious. So Git was actually created by this guy named Linus Torvalds, who he is a main developer behind Linux kernel, of course, which, in case you're unaware, is used by Linux Corporation and other OSs such as like Android and Chrome OS. And I don't know, I've seen so many memes recently about how like the latest mission to Mars was like only made possible because of Linux and all this stuff. So it's if it's not made aware on a global level from before that happened, of course it's been a huge thing now just because of that. But yeah, so he's a super big deal. And for all you scuba divers out there, I also found out that he created this scuba dive logging and planning software called Subsurface.
If I can't scuba, then what's this all been about? What am I working toward?
Is that him?
No, that's Creed from The Office.
My God. Oh my God, that makes it even better. Oh God.
Yeah, Linus has sarcastically quipped that even though the name, of course, Git, it means an unpleasant person in British slang. He said that, quote, "I'm an egotistical bastard, and I've named all of my projects after myself. First Linux, now Git." He describes Git as the stupid content tracker. And after some deep diving on my part, I actually found that the README file about Git goes a little deeper into the name, saying that it can stand for Global Information Tracker, which is, a very educated way of saying what Git is. But that's only when it works the way you want it to. Sometimes it can stand for goddamn idiotic truckload of shit when it breaks.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. I think the one stat that I have is that, right off of, I think, GitHub, going over the history of Git itself, it says that it's approximated that 70% of developers use Git. And I'm like, what are the other 30% doing? I was expecting that to be higher, really, by now. I have no clue. Like, I don't know, because I'm not sure if that was from, like the professional developers. I think that it was just developers
Okay.
in general. I think when I got so yeah, I was actually still surprised that that is the case because it's still rather low. And I think the moral of the story is use Git to learn it, and just start using it because there's a lot of help there. Like on Google, you can Google anything. GitHub itself has like a good like support docs and things to help you understand how to get started. I have never used GitLab, so I'm not really sure what the difference is.
Yeah, I've never used Bitbucket or GitLabs or anything. I've only used GitHub. So I don't know. I guess there's a reason. I would argue that it's probably way more simple and way more popular. It's, of course, like the foremost like versioning software out there. So with that though, since we've covered Git and GitHub and terminal and command line and all that stuff, let's get into some like normal fun stuff. So let's go into the recommendations.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I actually remembered something that I was trying to get into since we started the whole conversation with the terminal. For our listeners before getting into Git, there is this framework called Oh My ZSH. Which is like a way that you can customize your terminal so you can style it and change colors and make it all very custom to whatever it is that you want to see, like so it's familiar to you. And I think it also adds, a bit of character to the terminal in the case of Mac, because it can be, pretty bland. I've done a few customizations, but ZSH is a way for you to go even above, like just changing the color of the font and the color of the background. You can do even more stuff with that, and I think you might even be able to create like aliases and make it very like friendly for you and speed up your development process. So that's what I recommend, for those who want to check it out. It's called myzsh.com sh actually, yeah. And then you can check out how to customize your terminal window, which is really cool.
I like that. I'll be checking it out because I've never even heard of that. So,
Yeah.
well, for my recommendation this week, it's a little not technical.
Okay.
I actually recommend the socks that I found recently called Lightweight Crews, which are made by Richard Poor. Rocking them right now. They're nice and
Ooh,
tie-dye.
nice.
I've been a fan of their, clothing and whatnot for a little bit recently, all because of Dylan. And I actually own like pajamas from them. I have like the t-shirt I'm wearing right now is Rich or Poor. I have I got 2 pairs of socks a few weeks ago from them, and they're just like the most comfortable socks, which, as somebody who sits at the desk all the time, I want all my clothes to be comfortable. I want to wear like things that aren't going to make me itch and all that stuff. And these socks, because my feet get cold, because I
Yes.
live, kind of up in the north, they have to be kind of warm, but also not super itchy. So
Yeah.
great balance between those two things. And I can wear them out and show my ankles a little bit, and they look really sick. And I wear them with my Tivas. And yeah, I totally recommend those. It's also like, the company itself, from what I'm understanding, they recycle a lot of their fabrics and whatnot. So you're not buying these things that were just like, they're going to be put into the earth and, I don't know, not recycled in any way whatsoever. So
Right.
I recommend Rich or Poor, not a
Oh,
sponsor.
very cool. I'll check that out too. Now
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
interested.
but the one thing I didn't mention, I went back to the store where I bought the 2 pairs of socks initially. We went back today. I got 2 new pairs because I love them so much. Like all my other socks, which, you know, they were like Vans and Polo and whatever. Like, you know, they're kind of comfortable, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Even Stance, like since middle school, I've always worn Stance socks, and I always thought those were really comfortable, but oh my gosh, these are just like on another level of comfort. So everybody go get some Richard Porra socks and just feel the comfort.
That's awesome. What a plug.
That's not their slogan, I don't think. Feel the comfort.
It's so funny because I'm also pretty picky with my socks, and I wasn't really before, but I recently, not Richard Porra, but I recently found a pack when I went to like I think it was a Marshalls or something, Reebok socks, and they're my all-time favorite. Every time I go there, I look because I already have like 2 packs. And there, nothing beats that feeling of putting on a new sock, man. Oh my God. After you wash it, it doesn't feel the same. So,
Well, no, that's the thing, Anna, because like these socks, I was prepared to be disappointed by the first wash test. And they're still like so comfortable. And same with this t-shirt that I'm wearing. Like when I bought it, it already felt kind of worn. It wasn't like brand new, soft, delicate, and whatnot. It's just like super insanely good quality. I'm actually texting you right now the link to the site because I could not recommend their stuff more. It's so good.
Awesome.
Yeah, so definitely check out the socks. They're not like totally expensive either for a pair, like a good quality pair. It's definitely not like
Breaking the bank.
I don't know. It's like maybe $10 for a pair of socks, which sounds like a lot, but
Yeah.
honestly, like I'm gonna throw away the rest of my socks because there's no way I can handle it. Because like I don't know, I'm a guy. I've hairy ankles. I hate when the hair just like itches my ankles. It's so annoying, especially when I'm like talking to somebody. I'm just like reaching down under the table, itching my ankle.
Right.
And I haven't had any of that whatsoever with these socks. So I actually got more pairs today. So highly recommend Richard Porra socks.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And they have a
Check it
mission
out.
too, so that's cool. Supporting businesses that are conscious about something.
Exactly. Other than that, I do want to shout out techheadspod@gmail.com, of course. Feel free to reach out, email us any questions that you have, especially on some of these topics. Like I know, we kind of brush over some things and it might sound confusing sometimes. So, I mean, feel free to tweet us, email us, whatever you want. Either me or Anna will personally talk to you and kind of walk you through whatever is confusing to you. Absolutely. We'll do our best at least. And I don't know, we just want people to, kind of be successful and happy and understand what's going on. So that's kind of all I have to shout out and recommend. Any last words, Anna?
No, I think it was a very good 10th episode, so now I feel like more, interesting and fun topics to come for sure. And check out the one, I think the ZSH, the one thing that I was talking about for those who want to customize their terminals too. Get some socks as well.
Well, get some socks, and then while you're wearing your socks, go check out OMG ZSH.
Exactly. There you go. That's a nice evening for you.
Oh, yeah. Nothing else needed for a Saturday night whatsoever. Just some terminal and some comfy socks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're almost 20% through a year of podcasting.
That's crazy, huh? I can't believe it's
Absolutely
April.
Nuts.
Yep.
Maybe we'll get a whole staff to help us out because this has been absolutely insane. It's been a great journey.
It has, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you all in episode 11, and Tech Heads out. Peace.
Hasta la vista.